15 seconds to the opening of program.
Jesus Christ.
John Ambulance, teaching first aid to Canadians.
Webster is next on BCTV.
Good morning. It's no exaggeration to say that British Columbia appears to be facing one of its biggest crises ever in labor relations. I want to deal in some detail with perhaps one or 1.5 sides of the story this morning of the incredible work stoppage at Whistler, the vast new multi-million-dollar ski star of North America. And just to whet your interest, let me tell you this, that this particular crisis highlights a bitter, burgeoning battle between members of the organized labor movement. For instance, between the 17 unions of the Building Trades Council and the very powerful International Woodworkers of America. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. The first thing you must learn to try to understand what faces is that there is a labor jurisdiction called a common site. And it wasn't covered in great detail last year, but it almost came to an explosion, that it might well come to an explosion this coming year. Let me begin at the beginning. A couple of years ago, there was a 350-acre site over near Nanaimo, an industrial park, zoned as such. And the Building Trades Councils fought and won the common site classification, which simply put says that when building trades unions are on a common site, they do not have to work with either non-union people or unions not affiliated with their particular building trades council. And for example, I want to give you a couple of the non-affiliation clauses that are in the Building Trades Council agreements, which will help you understand it. For instance, in the operating engineers, if you have the television, roll it. If you don't, don't. In the engineers, in the operating engineers, the union reserves the right to render assistance to other labor organizations. Refusal on the part of union members to work with non-union workmen or workmen whose organization is not affiliated with the Building Trades Council shall not be deemed a breach of this agreement. And then there's another one from the laborers, which is a little clearer. And the one from the laborers says precisely this. The union reserves the right to refuse to work with workmen who are not members of the local union and who are performing work under the jurisdiction of the Laborers International Union of North America. Now, a lot of people think that that particular problem was solved at Duke Point. It was not. What happened was that there was a 350-acre site classed as a common site within the jurisdiction of the Building Trades Council. And then a firm gets a contract for a sawmill. And the IWA builds sawmills. And the IWA went onto that 15-acre site and started to build a sawmill. Building Trades Council, of course, got in a stew and said, you can't do that, it's our jurisdiction. And they went to the Labour Relations Board of British Columbia, which upheld the right of the Building Trades Council not to work on the same site as their brethren in labour, the IWA. So the Building Trades Council won the battle, but they lost the war, because Big Monroe of the IWA and his people just stuck their feet in and said, look, we're staying. The Labour Board didn't actually order them off the site. The IWA just said, the hell with you, or what's that effect? Appealed the decision and lost it. Don't forget that. but continued to build and completed under IWA tradesman Doman's sawmill over at Duke Point. That was the first thing. So get that quite clear. The Building Trades Council can get jurisdiction for a common site which, under a decision of the Labour Relations Board of British Columbia, God bless it, bans not only non-union people, but other union people not in the building trades from working. Now, the crazy thing about this is that unemployment in the construction trades of the Building Trades Council is massive. They talk about 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, because they have priced themselves in many ways right out of the market. But does that stop them from this battle? No way. These are tough, long-established international trade unions as hard as nails. I sometimes get the feeling, they'll be on Friday, by the way, all being well. I sometimes get the feeling that they're like lemmings going to the sea. They have an inherent wish to commit suicide. And then we come to Whistler. I've got some people involved in Whistler who are going to tell you. But there you've got a 30-acre or 30-parcel development, which includes all kinds of things, the town site, the ski lifts, the golf course, and whatnot. And it began with the feeling that non-union people, non-union contractors would be allowed to do about 10% of the work. All the other contracts have been given to union firms, many millions of dollars. But something has gone wrong. And the Building Trades Council, doing a Duke Point, but more effectively because they're not up against the IWA, have withdrawn all union work in the Whistler development. Because they want, and they're applying in front of the Labour Relations Board now, common site classification, nobody but union people to work on that site, and I think we'll find out too, nobody but union people to add any other finishing touches to the particular buildings, or they will withdraw their labour. They have already withdrawn their labour. They're already in front of the Labour Relations Board. If this develops into a situation where legitimate non-union people cannot work in a massive area defined by the Labour Relations Board, you know as well as I know what it will lead to. It will lead to a right-wing or a rightish clamour for a right-to-work legislation. And right-to-work legislation in its worst smashes trade unions. Nobody, least of all me, wants to see trade unions smashed. But since the Duke Point decision was brought down, what has the provincial government done? Nothing. And here we go fussing and fretting about confederations when the industrial construction and the coal mines ahead, and that may be the long-range aspect that the Building Trades Council are after, may tie up all non-union work anywhere near any union construction in British Columbia. People we're going to talk to this morning, left to right, as I see them, are Doug O'Mara, President of the Whistler Contracting Association, non-union. Russ Shepherd, who is a developer whose employees are unionized but whose labor has been withdrawn. Nello Busdon, who is a non-union contractor. And Raine, who is a government-appointed alderman in the municipality of Whistler and can tell us in detail what, if any, promises have been given or broken or not given of what lies ahead from Whistler after the break. I was a fairly lucid explanation. Yeah.
No, that's good.
Al,
I think the only point maybe, Jack, is that this is not a question.
It will become a question. It will become, I'm telling you. Once the IWA and the Building Trades Council get ahead of each other, God help us all.
The Whistler people aren't talking about strike breaking or things like that. They're just talking about, you know,
We want to
ability
work
to.
alongside them.
They don't want to work alongside you.
No, that's correct.
So don't downplay it. But, I mean, you say what you like. I'll say what I like. That's fair. With me now is Raine, alderman, municipality of Whistler, and Doug O'Mara, president of the Whistler Contractors Association. Now, spell out for me what is now, perhaps you can do it best, Doug, what is now closed down by the withdrawal of the union labour from Whistler.
Well, there are effectively right now approximately 19 parcels that are either in operation or ready to start, and all of those that are union have been completely shut down. Of that, there are 3 or 4 non-union parcels which are continuing and they are working.
Right.
In addition to the cafeteria on Blackcomb Mountain and I believe some on-mountain construction at
That is
Garibaldi.
withdrawn.
Those are also withdrawn.
Virtually, therefore, except for the non-union contractors who have about 10%, maybe 10 or 15% of the whole deal, all construction is stopped at Whistler.
Yes.
And that includes Blackcomb, Garibaldi lifts, the golf course. What's the other mountain? And the town site.
Yes.
All right now. What have you to tell me about arrangements made by the municipality of Whistler or anybody else which you may have broken and caused the union to act as it's doing, the Building Trades Council to act as it's doing? What arrangements did you have?
Well, Jack, it's a long and kind of complex story. And first, I should probably correct that on the mountain operations, the construction aspect in terms of buildings has ceased. I believe the construction of the ski lifts is still continuing because both mountains are under major expansion of their ski lifts. And that work is continuing by their own crews and special contractor groups. But the arrangement started that the town was developing. And when we're talking about this town site, we should bear in mind that there's a school on the site, there's the municipal hall, there's a fire hall, there's a police station, the new buildings that are going to house the drugstore and the liquor store and those kinds of things. So we're talking about really the downtown core of Whistler. This downtown core was subdivided up and sold by a wholly owned subsidiary of the municipality, which is the Whistler Village Land Company. All the shares are held by the municipality. And it was really brought in as a vehicle to finance these sites, to service them and sell them to the private sector. The municipality sold those to the private sector. They started to build. Some of the people chose, because they had bigger projects, to use union labor. Some of the people were local people who were small entrepreneurs, contractors, who said, I'll build it myself, non-union.
Right.
The union came on board, said, that's a difficult situation for us. We said, well, that's the way it is. They're going to be local participation. The local people have been waiting for 10, 12 years, some of them, to have an opportunity to get involved in Whistler. Now there's chances there they want to be involved. We can't cut that out. I mean, that's why they're living at Whistler. That's why they came here. The union said, fine, we recognize certain sites are non-union. We said, fine, that's good. Then everything went along smoothly.
And that's the point I want you to get to. The union, the Building Trades Council said to you, we recognize that certain sites will be built by non-union labor. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
How many parcels? Doug?
There'd be 3 in phase 1.
3 parcels in phase
And
1.
1 in phase 2.
Has the union double-crossed you on that?
No?
Are you still working on these 3 sites?
Yes, we are. They're the only ones working
Yeah.
right now.
Actually,
But have they
4.
not double-crossed you? I'm trying to push you to make it clear by withdrawing the labor from the other sites because of non-union labor.
Well, I guess not a double cross, but they've certainly disappointed those people who went with union contractors because they anticipated that because these 4 sites, the 3 in phase 1 and the 1 in phase 2, had been agreed upon, that wouldn't upset the project. Now, naturally, there were other areas, and I have to say that there, because of it being really the downtown core, other non-union people were circulating, were coming onto the job, were going, it started to confuse everybody that these non-union people are now going over here and there.
Let's not get confused. You had, through your land company or the municipality, an informal understanding that certain areas would be done by non-union labor.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the union now applying for in front of the Labour Board?
They have asked that the Labour Relations Board really declare a common site for the town centre and the Blackcomb project and the golf course project. Now, as of
And as a common site, of course, if that's given to them by the Labour Relations Board, there will be no non-union work allowed in any part of that common site.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Not the IWA, not KMO, not non-union people, only members of the 17 Building Trades Council unions.
I believe that's
How long can
stipulated.
you stand this? How much money have you got at risk in Whistler now?
Well, there's certainly some, terrifying financial ramifications.
Give me one of the terrifying. $500 million, $500 million, $200
About
million?
$300 million.
$300 million. In other words, financing already arranged for the construction of these places is at a perilous risk unless this is settled soon.
Yes.
Why don't you just settle it by throwing the non-union people off?
Well, I think that's where Doug and his group come on. There are local people who are saying, we've been living here. We want the right to work in our own municipality.
Fair enough. Now, Doug, give me your position. You just state your position to me. How many contractors in your group?
We have approximately 50 contractors, and they directly employ an additional 200 people. So we're talking, within our group alone, approximately 250 people.
These are small firms which do what kind of construction?
We're involved in all facets of construction. We have electricians, plumbers, carpenters, drywallers, etc., and we can deal with construction from beginning to end.
You are much cheaper than the Building Trades Council costs.
Absolutely.
Because you have no fringe benefits to speak of compared to theirs.
We pay our men often higher than union rate.
But you don't give them the fringe benefits.
It would depend on each individual company.
Health
Jack.
and welfare plan. They have a good health and welfare plan. They've got better overtime provisions, better pension provisions, and all those things.
Many of our members do have group health plans. They have dental plans.
Basically speaking, it's much cheaper to deal with you than to deal with a union firm.
Absolutely.
And I'm not knocking you for it. I just want to
Absolutely.
establish it quite clearly. Are you one of the people picketing the Labour Board?
I was involved in organizing the demonstrations.
What do you want the Labour Board to do?
Well, we feel that the important thing in this situation is that the Labour Board is used to dealing with job sites. The Duke Point was a job site. It was an industrial park. It had a fence around it. It was a completely different concept than dealing with a community. Right now, we have all sorts of different people, from wives of contractors to individual contractors who have small contracts all the way through this project, and we feel that that brings in a community aspect that the Labour Board is not used to dealing with.
Duke Point was, in fact, leased land. The land was owned by BCDC,
Are
and
you
it was all
putting your
leased.
case out? Have you got a lawyer in front of the LRB today in the continued hearings?
The municipality has
All right,
representation.
give me the next wrinkle. This is the last one before I go to my next guest. I do not understand this business of tenant improvement which must be done by unions. Can you explain that to me?
Yes, I can, Jack. When a building is built by union labor at the point of substantial completion,
Anywhere in Whistler.
anywhere in Whistler,
The framing is up and the concrete is down, the
That's
basic
right.
wiring is in, the floors and the partitions are in.
the partitioning inside the building is often not done.
Okay,
For
I've
example,
got
in a grocery store, what the non-union people are looking for is to go in and do the partitioning, put in the coolers, the freezers, and set it up as a store instead of just retail space.
Okay, when that is done, when it's at the point of substantial completion, what then happens if you move in to do the finite completing on a building put up by the Building Trades Council people?
As it stands now in Whistler, because we do not have a ruling as to whether or not it's a common site, non-union people are allowed to bid on the tenant improvement section, and we have the opportunity to do that work. And that's where the local people are most interested, and that's where most of our 10%
What does the
activity
Building
comes.
Trades Council say about that?
They feel that Whistler should be a common site, and if it were to be a common site, we'd have no opportunity to even put in bids on the tenant improvements. And of course, that would escalate the costs enormously.
In other words, if I get my building built by a union contractor, and later I want to put in my partitions or some additional facilities, I could not hire a non-union contractor.
That's true.
Could I do it myself?
That is a dubious point at the present time. One of the real problems you can see, Jack, is that many different people are involved in the owning of these different stores, even to the point of there's quite a number of condominium units. A fellow from Colorado owns a condominium unit, and all of a sudden he's told he has to have union labor come in and redesign his suite.
Oh, that's crazy. Who told him that?
If it is a common site in a
that
sense.
happened on the decision. You see,
Yeah.
the property is sold to...
If it's a common site, I cannot do the work myself.
Well, no, the situation is, see, the property is sold to somebody. They then perhaps strata title 2 or 3 units. So they have a commercial space. A shop owner then leases that space. So now, the municipality through the land company sold the land to individual A. He then subdivides it by strata titling it. The new owner then leases it to somebody, and that person then hires a local person to do the improvements. He's told, you can't do that. You have to have a union person there.
Supposing you get a Labour Board decision that says it's a common site, you've got to pack up and go.
Absolutely, and we have signed contracts, and many of our members have signed contracts now.
Will you pack up and go? Or will you do an IWA and say, the heck with the Building Trades Council?
We're going to be fighting right to the end, Jack.
Next, we're going to interview Russ Shepherd, who is a unionized contractor. I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill this morning, I'll tell you, after the break.
What?
Russ Shepherd is a developer who is building 2 hotels in the Whistler area. Now, perhaps you could just explain your situation to me now. Which hotels are you building?
Well, I'm building 2 hotels, Jack. One's called the Blackcomb Lodge. It's a 72-room hotel with a large commercial component, restaurant, lounge, seminar rooms, and so on. And the second project's called the Mountainside Lodge, and it's an 88-room condominium-type hotel with restaurant, swimming pool, and whatnot.
Now, who's building this for you?
The Blackcomb Lodge is being built by a union contractor called Bosa Construction Limited, and the Mountainside Lodge is built by a union contractor named Voth Brothers Construction.
How much money is involved in both hotels put together, roughly speaking?
About $16 million.
$16 million. How far are you ahead in the construction?
Well, the first hotel, Blackcomb Lodge, is scheduled to open, was scheduled to open, I might add, early in November.
Fully booked?
Fully booked, starting the traditional opening time in a ski resort, particularly at Whistler, if the snow conditions are right, is the American Thanksgiving, which is the end of November. So we were fully booked for that.
And the other one?
The other one would have been opening sometime in February.
How long have you been down now? How long has the construction been stopped?
Totally stopped for 2 weeks, but there was a slowdown, in my opinion, in the week before that. So you compound that, we're looking at about a 4, 5, 6 week breakdown in our
Did I ask you how much interest you have at risk in the financing of this kind of development?
Well, at the stage we're at
Or how much you're losing at the moment?
well, just in interest costs alone, we're losing probably $90,000 in the first month.
Did you anticipate in any way this common site complication when you gave the contracts for the hotels?
No, I didn't. We understood from the beginning that there was going to be a small component of local developer builders allowed to be in the project. We went with union contractors, with our own feelings that we were in a perfect situation, that there would be no holdups, no stoppages.
You're paying the full rate.
That's right.
On your contract through Bosa Brothers and all the rest of it.
That's right.
Why would they cut your throat?
I think they're trying to set a precedent for future developments in British Columbia, possibly in the mining towns that are going to be created and so on. I really don't think, from things I've seen, they have any real interest in Whistler at all.
In other words, you don't matter.
We don't care to them at all.
Nor the jobs?
No.
How many men would be working on your 2 projects, roughly speaking?
Oh, between 50 and 100 different times.
At different times, depending on the stage of... So here you have a $16 million development. You're losing $90,000...
That's interest costs.
Interest costs alone a day.
A month.
A month. Your opening dates will be all blown to hell.
We'll be out a month at this point, and we were completely filled. So we now have to cancel all those reservations. You can appreciate what this does to the reputation of a place like Whistler in the long term. And these are people coming from all over North America and Europe and so on.
Give me again how you feel about it. Why have you been chosen for this? Because of the Building Trades Council's determination to make Whistler totally union as a precedent for, say, the Secunca coal development.
Well, that's my feeling. That's what it is.
It's a good feeling.
My own, what I would do in the future is, my opinions now have changed. I wouldn't consider using a union contract. I'll never expose myself to this kind of situation again.
You're telling me now that, given the chance to move back a step, you'd deliberately go for a non-union contract?
Knowing what I do today, yes, absolutely.
It's kind of sad, isn't it?
Terribly sad.
Because, I mean, your prospects are so good up there that you were prepared to go on a kind of implied guarantee that with union travel, union man, union rates, union contractor, and a signed contract between the unions and the CLRA to which your people adhere, I presume.
That's correct. Wouldn't you feel safe in going into development of that nature?
Safe as houses.
That's right.
You feel much safer than going to a non-union operation which might on any reason, be picketed from time to time.
There's no security, in my opinion, now to use a union contractor. I can see that this has a lot of ramifications in the future. I can see what's going to happen. My own opinion is that the union contractor today is now going to have to build into his estimated costs of any project an allowance for this possible shutdown in the future. So what's going to happen then? His price is going to put him out of sight. He's just going to lose, in the end, is going to lose business from this.
In other words, if you're anywhere near what looks like a common site of the Building Trades Council or a dispute with the IWA and the Building Trades Council on who will do what and to whom and which, back off.
That's right. What's happened at Whistler is that it's not just the town site center that we were talking about. They've expanded it now up to the mountain. They've gone to a golf course. For heaven's sakes, it's been under construction since 1966 by a private developer trying to include that in this project. I mean, the man has been building the extension of this golf course since 1976.
76.
That's right, years before this town center ever developed, and that's been tied into part of the town center concept. So where could it stop? Maybe down the street 2 blocks the next time.
What does your
3 blocks,
contractor tell you about this? He just says there's nothing he can do. Did you have notification of the withdrawal of labor?
Yes, the day before it happened, we were notified and shut down. Our building is sitting there right now, 75% completed with the roof open to the elements. Water pouring in on all of our insulation and drywall, et cetera, you name it.
Can't you?
Our union roofing contractor has been there twice in the last 10 days to try and complete the roof and has been turfed off the site, told to get away.
Your own union roofing contractor to protect the building from damage?
That's right.
You could get a court injunction, I suppose.
If this continued, we expected this, frankly, to be over a week ago. We didn't think this hearing was going to last anything like this at all.
Well, you might get a decision from the Labour Board, God bless you, which makes it a common site for the Building Trades Council. Give me that again about the roof.
We have
Tell
a
me
roof.
the state of your hotel and the state of the roof.
Our building is 75% complete, but because of this slowdown, I'm terming a slowdown, in the week prior to this walkout, our roof was not completed. It's had plastic on it. We've got it 75% complete. The building's 75% complete. But this roof is open. About 20% of the roof is open to the elements. It has plastic over it, but the plastic won't stay at Whistler, I can assure you, especially with the rain we've had and the winds blowing. And in the meantime, the water is pouring into that building. The bulk of the building has the insulation up. A fair amount of the gyprock has been started. All the electrical wiring is there, exposed, et cetera, to the elements.
And your union contractor has come back since the withdrawal?
He's come back twice to my contractors told me that his subcontractor who does the roof has been there twice to try and finish the roof and has been turned off the site.
Best of luck.
Thanks very much.
Doesn't look very good, does it?
It certainly doesn't.
Russ Shepherd. Next I'm going to talk to Nello Busdon. Thanks, Russ.
Okay, Jay.
Wait just a second.
Okay. All right.
After. The light is beginning to dawn on some of this complex situation. And of course, the light will finally shine when the Labour Relations Board, or whoever's hearing it down there, and the mass of bureaucrats, makes a decision one way or another. Now, I've got a friend of mine. Do you know a man called Brian Rowley?
Certainly do. I started with him, about 13 years ago, almost 14 years ago, as a laborer.
Do you know that Brian and I are old friends?
Yes, I knew that he built your house.
Yeah, he rebuilt the
on
old
Salt
farmhouse
Spring.
for me. Now, Nello, when did you start your own firm?
I started about 12 years ago.
And how are you doing up to now?
I've been doing fine, just fine, no complaint.
What do you build?
I'm building a 13,000 square feet building, which consists of condominiums and commercial space in the town center, and it's called as package number 3. Also has a name which is called the Rainbow.
Mm-hmm. And how many men do you employ?
Anything from 4 all the time to, let's say, 10 with the sub-traders.
I see. And are you affected by this at this moment?
We can work. We are working there. There are not too many days that we are not there, even in weekend. But certainly we are affected. For example, the air conditioning are union people, and they can't be there, and we have a date for completion, and you just can't finish it if you don't have the...
Do you suffer a penalty if you don't complete this on time?
No, we don't, but we suffer a common penalty, which is a high interest rate to pay.
Right. Do the Teamsters deliver to your site at the moment? Or do
No,
you-
we couldn't have delivery, so that's one way also we get affected.
But you're using non-union Teamsters.
Yes, but some people are union.
Now, were you on the picket line at the Labor Relations Board?
I have been testifying at the Labor Relations Board, and also I've been a witness.
What have you asked them to do? What do you think they should do?
What I'm asking and what's the feeling of the most of the small contractor at Whistler is to be able to work side by side. There is no reason why we shouldn't be able side by side. I came to this country and I came to look for freedom. And what's happening right now, it doesn't spell freedom. If I'm denied to work on the place of where I choose.
Yeah, but you heard what I read out this morning. This is also freedom to bargain. And the unions bargained that the Building Trades Council don't have to work with anyone except members of their own 17 unions. So therefore you are a scab in their eyes.
Well, perhaps that's so.
I don't mean that, but you know what I mean.
I understand. Perhaps I'm so, I don't know. I have a certain concept of morality. That's how I go about it. I don't know what they bargained before, and what they, to me, it's unjust.
You would be quite happy, of course, if the Labour Board said, okay, they have this job, they don't have that job. So that at least you could work on your own projects without
Yes.
troubles.
Yes, because after living 14 years at Whistler and being putting up with the good and bad weather for years, when there was no work in winter time, and finally for years they're talking something's going to happen to Whistler, and finally when it came, it was supposed to be a community infusion of spirit and talent and so on, and all of a sudden you find yourself that you're cut off.
Well, supposing the Labour Board says, no, it's got to be union in all of Whistler, what will you do?
I finished this building, I have nothing else to do with the town center.
I have a question I want to put to Russ. I asked him to stay to explain this one to me from his point of view. Russ Shepherd, Mountainside and Blackcomb. You give me what this tenant improvement, unionized only tenant improvement means down the road for you.
It means to me that after my building's completed, and the way I'm looking at it from the way that the unions are stating their case, is that I could not have anybody come in after I've taken possession of my building from the contractor, and he's gone off the site, he's finished, he's left Whistler and back to Vancouver, whatever. And if I had, for some reason, wanted to have some cabinets built in the basement storage room or something, I would have to go to a union contractor to have him come and do that work. That's what they're saying. I say that's impossible.
You got to be joking.
Well, no, I'm not joking.
You mean that they don't only get jurisdiction or certification to build that building now, but to make every alteration except perhaps the odd screw nail for the life of the building?
Okay, whether it's the life of the building or the life of the whole town center development, I don't know. They've said that no tenant improvements to be built by anybody but by union contractors. Now, when does that stop? I don't know.
My thanks to Russ Shepherd and Nello Busdon. Now, Jack Heinrich, the Labour Minister, is on holiday. He would probably brush me off anyway and say the matter is in front of the Labour Relations Board, and therefore I, much as I would like to, haven't studied the situation very closely. My department officials are studying it very closely, and as soon as the Labour Board brings down a decision, then we could comment on it. But the reason I'm raising it in some detail this morning is to make quite sure that, you know, the politicians, the people in government, know what's going on, because that's always their excuse. Oh, it's in the hands of a government department, it's in the hands of a deputy, it's in the hands of the Labour Board. God knows how long it will take the Labour Board to make the decision. And whether you're with the Building Trades Council all the way, which I'm not, although I respect their legitimate, hard-won collective bargaining agreements if they're not against public policy all the way, even though I'm with the IWA and their determination too, because they build sawmills as good as the Building Trades Council builds sawmills, and I recognize fully the right of non-union people to work and live in this province. There's no law which says that we have totally closed shops, although what the Building Trades Council here wants, really, for the whole town site, whatever, is a totally closed shop. What's going to happen, I don't know. Friday morning, all being well, I have a subject to the hearings of the Labour Relations Board. I will have on the program 2 members, at least one, if not 2 members, of the Building Trades Council to give their side of the story. Later, when they come head-on with the IWA, as they are bound to do, we'll deal with that separately. And my last thought is simply this, that if this kind of thing is allowed to deteriorate ad nauseam, you'll finish up with people screaming for right-to-work laws, which nobody, surely, wants to see in this province. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll be back after the break. I must say it's nice to be able to get your teeth into a complicated story like Duke Point come Whistler. And nice to give a little needle to all the organizations involved, because if you don't give these people the glaring light of publicity, it takes a month to get off their, what's a nice word for bottoms. My reporters have been busy today and yesterday, and I got a phone call from a woman yesterday afternoon, good local story, trouble with school transportation, number of kids. What she actually said to me was, look, we're switching 128 of our kids from one school to another, and new people coming into the district are going to the old school. My kids got to go so many blocks in the bus to another school, and I don't like it one way or another. So I sent Agent X1, Steve Wyatt. Tell me the story.
Jack, it seems to be a case of school boards and both the government being caught off guard of an influx of large amounts of people and children and not enough room in the schools. Consequently, one school in Port Moody, 128 children are being bussed out of their normal school and being forced into other schools. The parents feel it's unfair, and they're putting pressure on the school boards and the government now. Jack, that's Dean Thompson and Jason Leonarduzzi. They've been friends here in Port Moody for about 6 years now. They've been walking to school together every morning for those years, until yesterday, when Jason's mother and Dean's parents got a letter from the school board saying that they were going to be split up. There's been a big increase in the population of the school at Coronation Park. And thanks to that, Jason was sent over to a school quite a few miles away in Coquitlam. Now, the parents are very angry about that. They say the kids who have been established here are being forced out of their own school to accommodate newcomers. A huge development has come into place. The parents warned the school boards 3 years ago that a new school was needed. That wasn't done. The kids have been split up. Jason, thanks to a fight by his mother, has been returned to his usual school, but still there are 119 students who've been living here for quite a few years who are being forced to be bused to another school.
I've been a taxpayer here for 10 years, and that is the school he started at and goes to school with his friends and his sister. And he was being bussed out because the area has been overdeveloped.
Didn't you warn the school board here as much as 3 years ago, warning that they needed another school?
Mm-hmm. And they said under no circumstances would it be our children that would be shifted out of the school.
So you think that what's happened then is that established children here have been forced out of their own school to make room for a new kid?
For new kids in the area.
What has been the school's reaction to that? Are you satisfied with the action you're getting?
Well, now, I kept my child off the bus yesterday morning. I refused him to go to school. I would not put him on that bus. Yesterday afternoon, I was told by the principal of the school, along with the 8 other parents that kept their children off the bus, that our children were now back in Coronation Park School.
How do you think about the way this whole thing was handled?
I think it was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, because we're dealing with little children, not a bunch of numbers.
Portable classrooms are an expensive item, and there was one portable supplied to Coronation Park and one to Glen School. But unfortunately, there's just not enough money around, and therefore they had to resolve the situation as an immediate one, and as a result, busing was the elected choice.
You know, if you win this battle, you're going to be faced with a crowded school. Is that any better?
I think to maintain the harmony that exists in Coronation Park, I think so. The children all play together, all the parents know the children, and this helps to maintain after-school activities, and I think to a large part reduce juvenile delinquency and vandalism at the school areas. So let's keep our kids here. Bring the portables in, we'll do the job.
Jack, the parent protest is mounting, but there are still quite a few children who will continue to ride the buses to Coquitlam to another school. Laura Llewellyn here is one of them. Laura, what do you think about having to take a bus to another school?
I do not like it at all. The ride, it's all the way up to the Lougheed Mall. It's a long ride, and after school, when the school is finished, you have to get on the bus and you have to ride back to the other school, and then you got to pick up any other little brothers or sisters or anything. And I have a little brother at the school here, and it's his first year, his second week, and he doesn't know his way home or anything like that. And so I have to come pick him up, and he gets out at 2:30, and my bus doesn't, and I don't leave school till 3, so my bus doesn't get there till about 3:15. In the first week here, I came out at 3 and I was taking him home, but now he's waiting longer, which is a bother to him.
What about you, Tanya? You rode the bus yesterday. What do you think about that?
Well, you get squished in the bus because there wasn't enough room for the bus, and like there's 3 kids to each seat, and you're all squished in with your school stuff, and then when you get out of your bus, you get tripped on and jumped on and all that.
What about the new school? Do you think they were prepared for you?
No, not really, because when we got in the school, they had grade 1's desks, and we had to sit in the grade 1's desks for the whole day, and then they finally took the desks out, and then we got in the big desks, and then we went to the other one upstairs, and for the library, they only had 1 shelf of books.
Jack, it's 10 to 9 in the morning, and the bus is late. What that means is these children are going to miss their first class at their new school in Coquitlam. That is just one small part of the problem. The parents here are angry. The majority of them will demand that at least 4 more portables be installed here so their children can return to their school. They will have a public meeting tonight and carry that demand to the school trustees and in turn to the provincial government.
When did you do that? As if I didn't know, but tell the people, because now you're back in the studio.
Just about 20 minutes ago in Port Moody.
Yeah, and you got back, edited it, and got it on the air. Yeah. How far is it? Who's that little girl? Laura Llewellyn,
Laura
the
Llewellyn,
other cute one.
Very well spoken, I'd say.
Keep an eye on her, and her as a commentator 10 years down the road, I'll tell you. Now, they're at this, what's the one in Coronation School?
Coronation Park in Port Moody.
120 of them being bused 20 minutes to the Lougheed Mall.
A 20-minute bus ride compared to a 3-minute walk.
Then they've got to go and come back in, and then the new kids in the neighborhood are going into the vacancies, or what might be the vacancies in Coronation Park.
That's right. It's restricted to grades 5 through 7 mostly. The primary grades are okay.
We didn't make this a television event deliberately, did we?
No, the parents were quite upset, and they've all decided last week when this thing, Monday when this thing first started, they were going to keep their children out.
Mind you, they were smart enough to phone yesterday.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Jack.
Anton Koschany was downtown yesterday and produced a little gem, tongue-in-cheek kind of, about very topical matter in view of the Federation talks. Official Languages Act. And he's going to complain to the Commissioner, Max Sheldon, believe you me, and here's Anton.
Jack, I was walking through downtown Vancouver when I saw something that surprised me very much. Right there's a sign. It's an armed forces sign. I guess it's a recruiting sign, similar to the kind of programs they've used before. But if you look at it, it says, "There's no life like it." But there isn't one word of French on that sign. Now that's very interesting because the federal government has to obey something that they put into place themselves. It's called the Official Languages Act. And the Official Languages Act says that government agencies, like the armed forces, have to use both official languages in their ads, like that billboard, in their pamphlets, in their communications, in internal communications. Yet there isn't one word of French on that sign, not even a français au verso, because there's no French or anything on the back of that sign, as a matter of fact. Now, there's a fellow that's supposed to look after this sort of stuff. He's the Commissioner of Official Languages. His name is Max Sheldon, and I've put in a complaint to him. Because at a time when the federal government is trying to push a new constitution, is trying to tell us that we need both languages entrenched in that constitution, it's strange to be standing on the streets in Vancouver and not being able to see French and English on some of the ads that your tax dollars and mine are paying for. And Jack, somebody seems to have defaced that sign. I'm told that other signs like that one have also been defaced with some red paint. Whether or not that's somebody who who thinks that there should be both French and English on that sign, or somebody who doesn't like English, I don't know. But while we were standing here looking at that, we saw one other thing that amazed us quite a bit. It's a sign over there that says, "Let's work together to build a better country now." It's another federal government ad. And again, there isn't one word of French on it. This is from a federal government that's committed in constitutional talks this week to having French and English protected in the new Constitution. In fact, that ad over there is probably part of the $6 million program of advertisements that they've done to make us all feel good about Canada, yet they can't put both languages on it. It's despicable. They're telling us on one hand that we should be using both languages, yet they can't even get them in their own ads.
I regard that as rather cute, and Anton will let you know how he gets on with his complaint to and his explanation from Max Sheldon, the official languages commissioner. One thing Anton didn't mention, the bomb on one of the billboards might just be a protest against armies and not a protest against a unilingual sign. I want you to look at an old picture now. We'll go slowly across an old picture. That's a young Webster on the left. That's W.A.C. Bennett, getting near the end of his regime. That's a fellow called William E.S. Clancey. Whatever became of him? And there, of course, is my late, very good friend, Jack Wasserman of the Vancouver Sun. And I'm going to do little features from time to time saying, whatever happened to? And this morning we're going to do whatever happened to old Bill Clancey, after the break. Might as well give
Ryan a shot there.
Ryan a plug, eh?
Yeah, he's...
What does this book cost? W.A.C. Bennett by Jim Ryan. Must cost a fortune.
I think that's $85, but Jack, it's a collector's item. It's got to be worth a real... There's only 1,000 of them put out.
Only to social creditors.
Well, I don't know. You're not... You got one, haven't you?
No, I haven't.
Oh. You got the $85?
You still a social credit flag?
No, I'm not a social... Billy doesn't like me. I was one of the old school.
I wonder why Billy... Tell me why Billy Bennett doesn't like you.
He didn't like any of the old school. That's why he's having so much trouble over there.
What do you think of Billy?
I think he's a nice boy.
Should Russ have got the job instead of Billy if you were going to hand it down from father to son?
I don't think Russ would take it if you gave it to him.
That's not what I'm asking you. Would Russ have been a better man for the job rather than Billy?
No. I think Bill's of the better for political life. Russ likes horses and...
How long do you think Bill will last as Premier of BC?
Well, if he doesn't smarten up, he's not going to last very long, I think. Mind you, he might save himself in this conference.
On the Federation thing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anybody gives a dash?
Well...
I mean, really, when it comes to voting, are you going to go in and vote? Oh, well, of course, you've got a separate thing. But I'm not necessarily going in to vote on Federation. I'm going to vote on things like right to work laws, follow them against them, Gracie's finger, dirty tricks, all these kind of things.
Well, I don't know how you vote, Jack. You never told me.
Certainly didn't vote social credit.
I wouldn't put it past you.
You wouldn't?
You vote socialist? Are you a socialist?
No, I'm very delicate about voting NDP. I'm again the government. You know that perfectly well on every occasion. But I'm really ashamed to have you here this morning, Bill.
I'm ashamed to be with you.
Because you're a separatist.
I'm not a separatist.
Come on, don't give me this.
We're being forced into a separate.
Western Canada Federation. You, W.A.C. Bennett, would tell on his grave.
Do you want to know the truth?
If he knew that you, of all people, the first thing he ever said in a speech was, I am a Canadian first.
That's right.
I am a British Columbian, but I am a Canadian first.
That's right.
He came up with the 5 regions concept.
Good.
Which is probably still the best concept down the road some years.
No argument. No argument.
You mean we're agreeing?
I'm agreeing.
I think that's enough for Clancy. Western Canada Federation. You want Federation of the West. You've got 3 members.
Let's go back.
3 members?
3 members where?
In this Western Canada Federation.
They've got no members. It's non-political.
How many supporters have you got?
Over 10,000. Over 10,000.
You'd be can I quite frankly say you could not produce 10,000 memberships?
In Alberta? Are you talking about the Western Canada or British Columbia?
Western Canada.
I'd say over 10,000, Jack. I talked to Mr. Knudsen yesterday. The mail is coming in. You can't believe how the mail is coming in the last few days.
Listen to this garbage. Federation of the Western Provinces. That means separation, doesn't it?
Not necessary.
Freedom from domination by Ottawa. That's claptrap.
Well, if you believe in that.
Free trade with the United States.
That's right. Do you think there's anything wrong with that?
Yes. Frontiers extended to the Arctic.
Right?
Saddle up. The West is going places. Even the North Pole is our territory. Send $5.
Does it say that there, Jack? Send $5?
It says membership fee.
Well, that's what membership fees are $5 in Alberta, but it's more here, I'll tell you.
How much is it here?
I think it runs around. Senior citizens $5, associate $10, full memberships $20, and life $100. And I can assure you, Jack, the mail is coming in and memberships are coming in.
You don't have a spokesman, you don't have a
Mr.
leader.
Mr. Knudsen spoke in Kelowna last night, Vernon Penticton the night before, and tonight.
Never heard of the guy.
I know you haven't, Jack, because you don't get around. You know, you should know a little bit about Mr. Knudsen, who he is. He's just an ordinary citizen that is trying to do something for Western Canada. He's not a radical. There's no politics in the situation.
No, except that he says here in this clipping, whatever it came from, Trudeau is a Marxist.
Well,
no politics in it?
If you'd been a good reporter, you would have proved that years ago.
Are you hysterical, too? Name of goodness. Willie, after opening all these doors for all these years for Bennett and doing your PR stuff and all the rest of it, I think it's gone to your head.
Let's talk about W.A.C. Bennett and what he thought about this.
How old are you now?
I'm pretty near as old as you.
How old are you?
Pretty near as old as you.
Answer the question.
You tell me how old you are.
62 going on 63.
I'm older than you, so you should listen to me and pay respect to me.
W.A.C.
Let's talk about W.A.C. what he believed
separation.
in. And he talked to me about this someday would happen. And he said it would be a utopia if British Columbia and Alberta were right. He said free trade with the United States. First, you must never leave the Queen and that type of British government. Have a lieutenant governor.
Hell with Quebec.
Free port in Vancouver. Free trade with the United States. Our own banking system. He told me many things that are going to happen, I think. And this Nixon of Canada that's now holding that parliament back in Ottawa, you saw the kind of papers he came up with yesterday.
You mean Trudeau?
Your friend, your close friend.
You mean my friend Trudeau?
If you'd ever done a good story on his life, I don't think he'd be talking to you.
Most of them have to.
Why hasn't a good reporter like yourself done the truth on Trudeau?
I did it on radio 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 68.
Why don't they tell the full story?
I did
his
a
whole
good
background.
I strongly object to PAP being peddled by right-wing neo-fascist organizations, most of which is palpably unbalanced, unfair, and half-truths.
Well,
even for Trudeau. Any man is entitled to a fair crack of the whip.
Why would you...
I think that Trudeau myself was very left-wing at one time, and I think he's now as orthodox and right-wing as Winters would have been had he been Prime Minister of Canada, except for the one particular blind spot he has about the province of Quebec. And he doesn't understand the relationship between Quebec
you read that,
and the
what he
rest
said
of
about
Canada.
Quebec, didn't he?
I've read everything.
Jack,
hold your breath,
Jack,
Willie.
he's further to the left than the NDP ever thought of being. Thank you, Jack.
How do you spell the name? C-L-A-N-C-Y?
Always get it right, Jack. C-E-Y.
How come you didn't get the pub in West Van?
I guess I was a ex-social creditor or something, but that bunch in West Van, you know...
Careful what you say after the break. Whether you like him or whether you don't, Clancy is a character. Well, actually, apart from this Can-West Federation nonsense, are you doing?
Western Federation.
Well, what are you doing? Living.
Living? I'm sort of like yourself, semi-retired.
You smart aleck. Nit.
Well, I haven't got a farm or a beautiful state on
You
South
keep your mouth shut about me and I'll keep my mouth shut about you, right?
Right, Jack.
Okay, fair deal.
Fair deal.
Do your bit to split the country.
I'm not endeavoring to split the country. We're being forced into it by your friend Trudeau. He's domineering the West. Our total vote in the Western Canada, he can take Quebec and Ontario, and we haven't got a chance of going anywhere. He's got more members in Ontario and Quebec than we have in the whole of Western Canada. We have 6,600,000 people, and we've got 2 representatives today's government sitting in Winnipeg. We've got, what's your friend's name out here, Mr. what's that, the senator's name? He's supposed to represent us. But that's representation without taxation, I guess. This is what we have. But
John, you mean taxation?
No, I turned it around, John.
And secondly, we have representation of the West from good Tories and good socialists. who represent us in Ottawa, whether you like to accept it or not. What you mean is we don't have our handles on the levers of power.
No, but your friend Senator, what's his name? Perot, is it?
Or the Honourable Ray Perot,
He represents
PC,
us. He represents
who
us.
spent many years working hard for the capital L Liberal Party.
I worked for the Liberals when
I
he
knew
was in.
when you were here.
Yeah, I worked for...
Oh, you're a turncoat too?
Yes, I worked for...
You were a Liberal.
I worked for
You were a
Mackenzie
social
King, Saint
creditor.
Laurent. I worked for Duff Patella, one of the great Liberals in this province, I might say. But none of them were equal to the W.A.C. Bennett. There was the greatest politician, the
When
greatest...
did you leave the Tory party?
I've never joined it.
You vote federally as a Tory?
I'll vote anyway. As long as Trudeau's ahead of it, I'm going to vote Tory, yes.
You'd vote broadband against Trudeau?
I would, because he's so farther to the right than Trudeau is.
I'll tell you what, you'll never make it as a public speaker. Yes?
No, I won't, John.
The one thing that upsets me most of all, and causes me to be very seriously disturbed.
What's that, Jack?
How tall are you?
Same height as
No,
you.
you're not.
I'm accused of being
You're about
at
5
times.
feet 4.
I'm accused of being.
And I'm 5'10" and a half. And people sometimes come up to me and say, hello, Clancy. It's the
Well,
only time I'm guilty of physical violence.
I have girls on Georgia Street come up and kiss me on the cheek and say, hello, Jack. Now, that's
I'm not a judge.
That's true. But anyways, John, I hear that Mr. Glardy is coming on to speak regarding...
Next Tuesday morning, whatever became of Flying Phil. He certainly doesn't like your politics. He thinks you're a traitor to the nation.
He does.
He's right, too.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of traitors to the nation if that's what Western Federation means, because there's no other way to get representation unless the 4 provinces get together. And the way Lougheed is being treated and the way Bill Bennett's being treated...
If you'll ask your chauffeur to wait till 10:30, I'll buy a cup of coffee.
Well, I don't know about a chauffeur. I've got my car, but... Jack, we haven't talked very much about Western Federation.
I don't want to
We
give
just
you...
had a little chat.
That's right. Just a change of pace. I mean, because I know you're not serious.
I am serious.
You'd be the Premier of BC and Western
I wouldn't be. I would never want to get in politics. That's a fool's game.
You've been in it all your life in the name of goodness.
No, I just worked for...
Remember the time you used to arrange all the openings up at Fort Nelson? What was the name of that place? The PGE?
Fort St. John?
And the other place?
Prince George?
Summit Lake?
Summit Lake.
What a disaster that was.
Well, we had lots of openings because Bennett was pushing the country ahead and he was opening up the north and he was doing a great job up there. But we haven't had many openings lately, but we hope in the future we're going to have some.
One last question.
Right.
People that want the Western Canada Federation can phone you at your office.
No, can't, John. We do. I don't have an office anymore.
I won't send out forms for a separate
No, but they
organization.
can write to Box 9680, Western Federation, in British Columbia, V6B4G3.
Excellent.
And they can get an application. They can join.
And
We'll
send money.
get the literature out to them.
Last question.
And you can join if you wish.
I
After,
wouldn't
I'll wait.
touch it with a barge pole.
Oh, I wouldn't believe that.
Next question.
Yes, sir.
Who should replace Bill Bennett as leader of Social Credit and possibly the next Premier of BC? Who, in your wisdom, because you're a crafty old fella, you've been through it all, you know what sells to the public, you know how to merchandise people, who should take the job from Bill Bennett?
Well, I think a government has to go down to defeat before you get a new leader.
He won't quit.
Well, then there's the one man I would think.
Who?
Vanderson.
My thanks to Bill Clancey. A more serious interview with Pauline Jewett on the Pacific Press Capers after the break.
Oh, yeah. Hearing about
Pauline Jewett is the NDP MP for New Westminster, Coquitlam. And I asked her to come in this morning specifically to confirm my pessimistic views that despite the actions of Thompson and Southam in squeezing the sun into nothing and getting out of Winnipeg and, what was the other place?
Ottawa.
Ottawa, that the House of Commons under a Liberal government or any other government is virtually powerless to prevent the disappearance of the daily newspapers except for one paper towns in Canada.
No, I think a government has power.
First of all, what do you think of the deal?
Oh, I think it's just shocking, and I think it shows that the care of big business in the press is almost nil. You know, at the same time that Thompson was abolishing the Ottawa Journal, it was buying 5 papers in the United States for $21.5 million.
Didn't know that.
Yes, at the same time. It's therefore in it for business and for profit and not for serving a community with a newspaper. That is not its objective, nor is it Southam's objective to serve a community. You say the government couldn't have done anything. Actually, on the Pacific Press situation here in Vancouver, you remember in '57, the then Vancouver Sun Publishing Company got 50% of Pacific Press, and Southam got 50.
Right.
And at that time, I understand, signed an agreement that despite this 50-50 arrangement, they would maintain the existing quality, character, and personality of each of the newspapers and independence, freedom, and autonomy in the publishing thereof.
That is correct. That was signed in 1957 by Don Cromie after an investigation by Henry of the Combines Commission.
Yes, a very long investigation by the restrictive
Do you know what the Southern people tell me now?
Yeah.
Well, you finish your bit first.
Well, it was just at the end they said, in our opinion, what is required is a judicial order which would restrain the parties from making any alteration in the agreements without the approval of a court. Now, I think that that kind of judicial order could have been asked for and could have been secured because they have made a fundamental change. Southam now owns the whole thing. And so that's the first thing that could have been done.
Yeah, but of course, back to those days, they could have applied for, because Henry wanted them to apply for a judicial order from a court. They didn't.
True.
Because liberal newspaper publishers didn't want their freedom to wheel and deal interfered with. And I am now told, from a fairly high level in Southam's, that because the operation was sold, not even the first part of that undertaking which was signed now applies. That because they sold it, it doesn't apply.
Of course it applies. Well, you know, that's just mixing words up. Well, the second thing I think the government, so I think there could have been far more pressure to have gotten a judicial order. The second thing I think the government could have done would have been to have frozen all of these transactions. For example, what has happened Ottawa and Winnipeg? In Winnipeg, it is Southam's that have sold out.
Right.
In Ottawa, it is Thompson that has sold out.
Right.
Clearly there was collusion here.
Clearly.
We'll sell out the Winnipeg Tribune, or rather, cause it to cease to exist, and you, Thompson, will do that with the Ottawa Journal. Mm-hmm. And we'll each have then one paper left.
You take this city, I'll take that city.
Right, exactly. Now that is collusion, I think. The Restrictive Trade Practices Commission, despite what the minister says, the minister doesn't seem to be interested in...
Who is the minister in this?
Andre Ouellette. Mm-hmm. Despite what he says, I am sure the Restrictive Trade Practices Commission can inquire about what clearly looks like collusion. Also, if the government had frozen, if it had just said, no, you will not go ahead and do this, until there has been an investigation to see whether or not what you say about the operation of these papers and their profitability and so on is true. Mm-hmm. It could have easily just frozen.
I have a certain sympathy, not with the Thompsons or the Southams, but the likes of the Cromies, if you could ever find a real local publisher of a big city, because the unions in the newspaper business, compounded by bad management,
well, the management
and the lack of modern techniques, has made it almost impossible to run a newspaper at a profit.
Well, interestingly enough, some of the best-run newspapers in the world are employee-owned or employee-controlled, and they're not in the business for profit only.
A newspaper shouldn't be in the business.
And they shouldn't be in the business at all.
See, the biggest weakness that really affects me is that I've been doing some reporting on the ECAT Election Commission and other things, and the Sun has taken a very good position on it. You know that? Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden we find the publisher of the Vancouver Sun writing a pathetic editorial saying, we have been assured by Southam's we will have 100% freedom, decency and integrity. Yeah. But when it suits them, there are no scarifying or exposés of newspaper takeovers or newspaper mergers or newspaper melds. In other words, their effectiveness as a critic of other people is damaged by the silence on their own behavior.
Yeah, of course. And of course, now there won't be any sort of Western voice in Vancouver either.
More with Pauline Jewett after the break. Two points with Pauline Jewett on the Thompson-Southam disappearing acts. What do you think, what would be good legislation, not socialist legislation, but what would be good legislation to prevent the disappearance of newspapers? If we want to, and I presume we want to.
I'm not all sure. that I'm all that worried about the disappearance of newspapers like the ones that are disappearing, because they're mostly into what is nowadays called disco journalism anyway. And they're not really performing a function, and I don't think, as long as big business operates in the newspaper world, they're going to form a function of informing the public. I think what the people will want will be some kind of larger government support for the startup costs of employee-owned newspapers.
Why couldn't you just tell me that we should have decent anti-cartel legislation
No, I don't
which prevents them from selling the papers to their buddies and making one paper town?
They have good cartel legislation in the U.S., far better than Canada, and they haven't prevented the concentration of ownership in the newspaper industry and the one newspaper town. They have, a stronger anti-combines legislation than we do. Nowhere in the world, actually.
Toronto Sun was employee-owned to begin with.
Right.
Now it's been taken over by a group of big boys.
Exactly.
Big individuals, not chain people, but big individuals.
Yeah,
when you talk about worker-owned newspapers, I suddenly think of the crises in the newspapers in Quebec, where the journalists from time to time will ban the appearance of certain materials in the newspaper because it doesn't suit their politics.
Oh, well, that happens. Look, all newspapers have certain rules of that kind. You're not going to get absolute purity, however it's owned. But I do believe that the difference between a newspaper owned by Southam and a newspaper owned by Thompson nowadays is not going to be very substantial.
No.
I do think that the role of the independent commentator, the role of the first-class reporter, has been enormously undermined by the way in which this concentration of the industry has proceeded. Yeah. I think the only way that it can be rejuvenated, really first-class reporting, really first-class investigating, is through, well, two means, I would say. One would be assistance with startup costs of new dailies, preferably, I'm saying, dailies that are initiated by the workers, the employees. And the second route I think we might go, and I see Charlie Lynch suggested it the other day, and I believe Harry Rankin has thought about this, and that would be a CBC type of newspaper.
Oh, God preserve us.
Of course, that is sacrilege on the BC TV, I realize.
No, sacrilege to me.
No, what?
I mean, a CBC type newspaper.
For years,
the unspoken wish of the authority and power.
No, do you realize that most of the radio and TV journalists today employed in the CBC, and indeed in BC TV as well, or in CTV, have more freedom, less pressure on them to do things that the bosses want than they do in newspapers? Now, traditionally, the professional writer has said they don't want anything to do with any kind of public corporation like the CBC. But increasingly nowadays, they're saying that may be the only way we can be assured a fair amount of freedom.
You have to start the CBC from scratch again. If you look at the CBC or any of the network operations out of Toronto, running the whole country from a Toronto base, I'll tell you what's going to happen.
Oh, no, I think its headquarters would be in Vancouver.
The Toronto Globe and Mail will finish up as probably the only daily newspaper in this country, not far from now, distributed and printed by satellite. Press a button on your TV set and out it'll come.
Oh, well, if you're going to talk about future technology, in 20 years there probably won't be any newspapers because we'll all be pressing our buttons in our homes.
More's the pity, because it's nice to be able to show your clippings.
Feel something, yes.
Yeah,
well,
but a CBC-type newspaper is sacrilege to me as an
Well, of course it is. It has been a sacrilege to anybody over 50. But the point
why
is
the labour movement in this country with untold millions of dollars? Think of all the Teamsters pension funds. Think of the BC Federation of Labour. Think of the IWA. Not only have they never started a newspaper, but they wouldn't buy it if it was there to be bought, because the working man doesn't want a trade union-type daily newspaper, I'm afraid.
Well,
agreed with me?
Again, well, that's another point entirely, whether you're not a trade union. I'm simply saying that newspapers like the Milwaukee Journal, Le Monde, The Guardian, which are employee in England.
Is it employee owned now?
Well, it's owned by a trust, but in effect, all of the profits and so on go back into the
Toronto
newspaper.
Star is owned by a trust.
Toronto Star. Either of those alternatives, it seems to me, is better, but that's a little different from the idea of having a
you know perfectly well that most commentators out at the CBC and the Press Gallery in Ottawa stand there interpreting the views of the government in power without any proper examination. They even took Viewpoint off years ago. That was the last time anybody gave an opinion on the CBC.
Oh. No, well, that's not quite true. They do give a few now.
Pretty boys, all handsome commentators.
Anyhow,
I'm more than just a pretty face, I'll tell you. However,
the government has, as you know, set up a royal commission under Tom Kent to...
isn't that lovely?
Yeah, isn't that
Tom
lovely?
Kent, the guy who came out here as a, what do you call these people? Saddlebagger, not saddlebagger.
He came out and ran in
Carpetbagger.
Came out and ran Burnaby Seymour, as it then was.
Got beaten
in
too.
'63, yeah.
By Tommy Douglas.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he, I hope, will look at this matter objectively.
No faith.
No faith. Anyhow, he is a Royal Commissioner at the moment to examine
Another
it.
Royal Commissioner.
And as I say, we all may be talking about something that in 20 or 30 years is going to be dead anyway.
Including me.
I mean, newspapers, magazines, for all I know, it all may be dead.
Okay, good shot. What about the House? What about this stuff in Ottawa? Oh, you're a liar. Here's a good one.
No, I'm not actually, but...
Weren't you a liar at one time?
No, just a political scientist.
Political scientist. Good point. 2 minutes, we've got to cover it. Trudeau came on this morning at the opening of the conference and said we must have our rights in franchise. They began to talk about freedom of speech and to put the common law in black and white, entrenched, right, entrenched. Blakeney came on, it was Blakeney, and demolished them. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I must say I'm very leery about putting the protection of all our rights in the hands of the courts. Trudeau keeps saying he's putting them back to the people. In fact, he's putting them in the hands of the courts, rather than in the hands of the legislature.
No matter how bad our legislators or our MPs are, we've got to have the power there.
Well, 7 provinces now out of the 10 are opposing the entrenchment of rights.
Well, that's down the tube, therefore.
Well, it's going to be...
Except for the French language.
Well,
They'll
even there...
but they'll go for a modification of that.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. Blakeney's always said that he was certainly in favor of that, but really worries about putting this enormous array of rights in the Constitution, thereby having the courts have the final say.
He went back to the Japanese internments during the war as a justification for putting it in the Constitution. That's crazy. I mean, it was a bad thing, perhaps improperly done in time of war, but we can be protected from that quite simply. Don't do it politically.
Yeah, well, maybe we will end up with 4 or 5 basic rights like speech, conscience, association.
Religion and language.
And then religion and language, yes. But Trudeau is not going to get his whole package.
Will they come out with something?
Well, what I'm worried about is he'll say, well, phooey to all of you and go to Westminster anyway.
But even at that, he's restricted to federal legislation.
Legally, he could do anything. Legally.
Under an act
as
of
long
Parliament.
as he gets the House of Commons and Senate to support, he's got a majority in both places.
Can the House pass a constitution or only an act?
The House can only pass an act, a resolution recommending so-and-so to Westminster. It's a resolution of both houses that he wants. And
but if he brings it back, can he pass an act? Supposing he brought it back arbitrarily. Must it come from London, the actual constitution?
Well, yeah. They would have to pass an act of renunciation. We would pass an act adopting.
Pauline Jewett, NDP MP, New Westminster-Coquitlam. Keep an eye on these newspaper people, will you, please?
Yeah, you too.
And don't be soft on the CBC. I'll be back after the break. Morning, Gladys.
Good morning.
I thought we had Barrett for tomorrow. Ex-Premier Davy Barrett.
He is in Ottawa as an observer to the Constitutional Conference.
Oh, fair enough. We can do him next week. We can try, therefore, to get the Building Trades Council tomorrow morning if they're watching right now. We'll phone them later.
I've already phoned and left a message.
Good. What else have we got for tomorrow?
You've got...
number of good little
you've
bits and
got
pieces.
Anton and his cyclers.
Oh, yes.
Looking for a miniplex or something.
And the story out of the courts in New Westminster, which we want to do. I've got 5 seconds to go, 3 seconds to go, 9 a.m. precisely. It's got to go untouched. I can't, unless you want to put another break and kill something. No, let it go.
Stand by to do this.
Just a minute.
Robbie can promo everything else. We'll do a visual
Yeah.
promo for Robbie and we'll pick you up in the beginning.
What do I say now?
Oh, 5 seconds.
Just a 5-second teller. We're going to run this morning's lead tonight. You didn't see it. I'm not in this one.
Just a 5-second promo.
What am I saying?
5-second promo.
Suzanne.
Suzanne, explain everything after.
5 seconds to 9. Things will have changed though from Whistler.
That amused a lot of people, annoyed some others.
Tonight, Whistler, Jewett, Clancey.
Whistle at Jewett and Clancey. No.
She'll explain everything to you in a moment.
Is Right to Work coming to BC? Watch tonight.
Right, we're ready to do this from a 5-second from where you are. Oh, why come over and check? Let's do it.
Close, fairly, not too broad on that shot. Yeah, I like that. No, I like that. I don't like to be all body and no face. Yes, yes. Yes, love. Yes. Oh, Charlie McLean. Yes.
I like to be all face and no run.
Right. Kazoo, McLean. Gladys, would you take the number that Margaret's got? Okay. Wait, I've got a pencil here. It's okay. Right. Right. Cigarettes, Kazoo, and McLean. God bless. Call you back. I'll call you back. Let's go.
Okay, where are we? Are we ready?
Is Right to Work coming to BC? Our Right to Work laws coming to BC? Don't miss tonight's program. Tonight's rebroad.
Give me a line, George.
Program coming to BC. Don't miss tonight's program. Could be doing that in 4.5 seconds.
Easy. Fairly tight shot on this, Suzanne.
All right, Maureen, I can hear you.
Suzanne, fairly tight on me on this one. You know. Easy job, Bill.
I never knew you not to have an easy job. Remember when we used to rub you down with wine and you went underground down on EC Street? How long was that?
25 years ago.
It's right on the bars, Maureen, so I can be going up on the right.
Remember the trip to California when you lost your wallet?
Remember you ruined my pants?
Yes. With a policeman with a shotgun? And the revolver?
That's when you bought Kaiser's stock.
Never did.
I bought it at $2.65.
I had some at one time. That's a rip-off, that brick deal. That's not a way to value stock, as Bill well knows.
What they're going to do is have a lot of profit from Kaiser. They can develop their oil tax money. Brick's a good buy right now.
I'm in brick, but I'm also in the Bank of BC.
We're going to split it 3-for-1.
What's it at now?
36. That looks great to you.
I should have bought more.
Go down to 12 and then we'll go back to about 18. Goodbye.
When are we going? When are we going?
Where are we? We'll be there right there with you, Jack. There won't be a couple of seconds.
That's a shot. I like that shot.
That's the shot he likes. That's the shot he likes.
That's a good tight shot. Tie, jacket, and that's good. That balances nicely.